Welcome back. Honest Man, here with more Dragon's Dogma, Dark Arisen. Last episode, we ventured through the second section of Bitterblack Isle, culminating in our battle against the Dark Bishop. This episode, we basically pick up where we left off and delve into the third and final section of Bitterblack Isle. I don't have a whole lot to say about it, however. Certainly the third section is useful for level 2 gear. Chests are abundant. But as I mentioned last episode, you really shouldn't need any. As long as you successfully gamed your very first weapon and very first armor, I think you should be in pretty good shape. And again, more specifically, the best armor, assuming you have at least one female, is the Delta Guard. All of the other armors you can obtain through other means, quest rewards, or potentially moonbeam gems. And then for weapons, as long as you get a good primary from your first drop, you should be in good shape. I think the shelf life of the tier 2 weapons is extremely short. Again, assuming you didn't invest a moonbeam gem very early in the game and get one that way. If you're just now getting into a tier 2 weapon, you're not going to use it very long. So again, as long as you're able to get a good primary, I think you're in good shape here and just push straight through to Daimon. And that's basically what I've done here. Certainly, the first order of business was to get to the Arisen's Refuge, to get to the notice board there. That allowed us to get into the By Royal Decree quests, specifically number 2 here, which awarded the Immortal's Coat. If you don't see these on your first trip, which you might not, don't be discouraged. The Bitterblack Isle notice boards have a cap on them, so you can only have so many at once. If the quests aren't there, simply complete other Bitterblack quests in your active queue, and then they'll show up. There's some false information out there saying that these are random. These are most certainly not random. If it's not there, complete some of the other quests, they'll show up. After completing the quest for the Immortal's Coat, I did not spend much time at all in this third section of Bitterblack Isle. There's going to be plenty of time for that in the future. Instead, I basically just critical pathed through to the Fallen City. This location is special for a couple of reasons. The first is that your very first trip here, there's not going to be any enemies. It's going to be completely safe. The second is that there's a chest here with a rare chance for a level 3 armor, which is a golden opportunity that we don't want to miss. The specific chest in question is on top of the roof in this location. As I described last episode, what you'll want to do is create a physical copy of your save, and certainly do that before one of your pawns collects the treasure. But if you make a save right here, then you can manipulate your entry point into the list of numbers that represents the pool of level 3 armors. That's a fancy way of saying you can basically control and save scum your very first drop. Subsequent drops you have no control over, you're locked into the list. But this first one, you have a unique opportunity. Easier said than done, however, because we basically need 3 rare things to happen at once. First, we need to actually get the armor from the chest, of course. Second, the level 3 Bitterblack armor has 2 different tiers. There's sort of a high tier and a low tier, and certainly we want the higher tier. In addition to that, Bitterblack level 3 armors have the unique characteristic of having a chance for a random enchantment. So we need to get the item from the chest, we need to get the rarer, more valuable armor, and then we want that armor to have a particular rare enchantment. All of that is to say that I would not be super picky about what you get. I'll be happy with a headpiece, a chest piece, arms, or legs. I would take any of those 4 as long as they have the desired enchantment. I also want to be sure to note that the fact that this zone is devoid of enemies on your first trip means that as soon as you're strong enough to defeat the Dark Bishop, you can get into here and get a level 3 armor. The catch, if there is one, is the fact that this chest isn't going to respawn until and unless you go through the sanctum door in the back. However, that also means there's going to be enemies spawning here, and this very quickly becomes one of the most challenging, if not the most challenging zones in the game as a consequence of those enemies. So you definitely want to take advantage of this first opportunity, not having to try to fight your way through to this chest to be able to make a save point here. In all subsequent trips, you'd basically be looking at killing, probably a dragon or two in order to be able to make a save at this point. So don't miss this chance.
This looks interesting.
There it is. I hope it goes without saying, but this episode is heavily edited. The full process here probably took me somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 hours to get something good. Your mileage may vary, of course. I'm not sure where I landed on the bell curve. But our standard operating procedure here, I definitely want to prioritize my main character over my pawn. And end game for my main character is going to be in Strider. So I'm going to change both myself and my pawn to a pure yellow class, Strider. And then go about our purification. And this is going to be an excellent item because obviously I engineered this, but there we go. Hood of Oblivion. And it has the perfect enchantment for a headpiece here, which is the boost strength when you've been noticed by a large number of enemies. That's a little deceptive because it also affects magic, and it also does not require a large number of enemies. So this is desirable for both martial and mage characters, and the minimum is plus 5%, which stacks with everything. So even if you're just fighting one thing, this boosts your strength. If it's at least 3 enemies, it jumps to 10%, and it keeps jumping by 5% increments. But in most cases, I think we're going to be talking about a 5 to 10% boost. And then certainly the Oblivion level of gear is the highest level of gear for these vocations. The lower tier is the Shadow set. Now that we have our level 3 armor, it's back to the Fallen City and time to kill Daimon. Certainly I did get a bit stronger between edits, as you can see I'm up to level 168, and a big part of that was simply finding a cursed dragon to help Dragonforge this Hood of Oblivion. So that's obviously the headpiece. Quick gear check for the rest of my kit. Gold Abyssal outfit, gold trophy jacket, Dragonforged crested arm guards, gold Delta guard, silver assault boots, gold Divine Embrace cloak, and I have a couple of rings that boost strength, 64 and 67 respectively, and a little magic defense kicker. For weapons, I'm going to be using a silver Cursed Bite. This is a level 2 bitter black weapon, and a silver rusted bow. So obviously the point here, just like we saw with the bishop, was to try to inflict some debilitations. Poison isn't that great, it doesn't scale well, but torpor is definitely worth it. Once we slow him down, then we're going to move in for the kill. Our main pawn is still rocking the silver Bloody Thistle, silver Immortal's Helm, Dragonforged Dragon Leather Vest, and a mere 2-star Immortal's Cloak, gold Blessed Sleeves, gold Twisted Leathers, silver Assault Boots, a gold Beastly Mantle, and for rings we have 1 Barbed Nails and a ring with Petrification resistance. Petrification is a concern against Daimon. It might not come up, it might. Better safe than sorry. You want to make sure you have Petrification resistance. For items, I have a handful of Wake Stones. I will be very surprised if we need even 1. And I have a small collection of curative items. I think the only thing that's actually relevant here is the Liquid Vim to basically eliminate stamina cost. I'm planning on dropping one of those for sure. So without further ado, let's get them.
No pass defense. Repent
Ah, he knocked me off. Just want to try to get up bit by the head and then dire gouge.
You've met him.
It's like the torpor wore off, so I'm going to re-up that.
He was my master, though it was 100 lifetimes past.
And now it's time for our Vim.
When he came to face the dragon, he was given a choice too hard, too cruel to make.
I'll scale it and strike from above!
I shall restore your health. Hold on. He could live with neither answer, and so he offered only a curse in reply. Those words saw him become the monster he is now. In granting him the cursed form he chose,
Easy.
that's all.
And as you can see, he just dropped a level 3 armor. This is why it was so important to use that chest. Because if you were to use this as your very first armor, you have to kill him again every time. Now, it's a 100% chance, so maybe that would ultimately be preferable to random chance on the chest. I guess the choice is up to you, but I prefer to use the chest. Speaking of chests, in the treasure room here, there's 4, and the one on the right, you want to get another armor. This is actually an opportunity to get your very first level 3 gear, which is what he just opened. But you want that to be an armor instead, because we want to use our shenanigans for the level 3 gear. And I don't think this is a good place to do that. There's going to be a better opportunity to do that. And in addition, I just think an armor is a much better value from this chest. So do make sure you get the armor there, not the gear. With Daimon dead, the Isle is changed. Most obviously, our buddy is right up front here, which makes it much easier to rarefy equipment. There's also the Heart of Darkness. Defeat Daimon's awakened form. Other changes that will quickly become obvious are the fact that all the enemies have been replaced and respawned. So there's a much tougher array of enemies to greet you. The shortcuts that you previously unlocked are closed, so you need to go back through the long way, through the 3 sections of the dungeon. But the good news is that most of the treasure chests are also changed. And I think the number 1 priority should be Bitter Black Gear level 3. Presuming you have any outstanding needs of various skill bands, that's a golden opportunity to get exactly what you want, using the hard save method that I described previously. There are a couple of different options for it. There is a 100% chest in the Forgotten Hall to get a level 3 gear. I honestly don't recommend that one, however. The pool for ring options is so big, I think it's much better to use the Ward of Regret. The Ward of Regret has 2 chests in relatively close proximity that each have a 50% chance for a level 3 gear. So I would clear out the ward, make a hard save, and then get both of those chests. Obviously looking to get a level 3 gear from both, and then see how you do. And spoiler alert, at least for me, it did end up being the second of the 2 gears that ultimately got me the band that I was after. So I think doing the twofer there is much better than the 100% chest in the Forgotten Hall. It's also time to get a level 3 weapon. And we have 2 options for that as well. One is the Bloodless Stockade, and the other is Back in the Fallen City. there's a bit of a trade-off there. On the one hand, the Fallen City chest does not have the possibility of being a man-eater. The downside is that you're probably going to have to kill some stuff before you can make a save there, and that might be pretty challenging. On the other hand, the Bloodless Stockade is much safer and much easier to get to, but the chest does have the possibility of being a man-eater, so that could foil your plans a little bit. Ultimately, I think I would recommend the Bloodless Stockade, but it's going to have some challenges. The way to make that as easy as possible is to critical path to the chest. Do not open all of the other chests. The way that the man-eater spawn works is that it's a distributed chance across all of the eligible unopened chests. So if you create a situation where the chest with the weapon in is the one and only eligible chest, you have a very, very high chance that that's going to be a man-eater, and that's going to make your life very difficult. So don't open anything, go straight to that one chest, make your hard save, and hopefully get your weapon. A confounding variable here is the fact that you may need to make an additional save or 2 or 3 in order to get what you want. And every time you do that, it's a chance that that chest is going to turn into a man-eater again. So that might make your life a little difficult, and you might end up going to the Fallen City anyway. And the reason I say that, the reason I think you might need to do that, is because just like once you're into the item list, it's not random, it's pseudo-random, and you're locked in. In that exact same manner, there is something in the save file. I don't know what it is, but I'm very confident that there's something in the save file that they're using to either directly or indirectly inform where you get inserted as your initial entry point. And it's my experience with the level 3 gears that has cemented this notion in my mind, because there were way too many instances where I was getting the exact same 2 master rings with the exact same 2 resistances and the exact same 2 potencies over and over again. So that is definitely not fully, truly random. And just creating a new save got me into a different set of items. So if you're having trouble, if you're getting the same stuff over and over again, just do a new save file. It might be something as simple as a timestamp. It might be something as simple as the number of times you've saved since the beginning of the game. I don't know what it is, but there's something in there. And if you're having trouble, just make a new save. Unfortunately for me, I had to learn the lesson the hard way, and I opened too many chests in the Bloodless Stockade. I was having too many man-eaters over there. So I did end up coming here to the Fallen City. As you can see, it's a real party. I think there's a dragon in the distance there. There's all sorts of bad stuff going on. But I did manage to get a save down at this point. And this is the spot with the chest in question. So again, I did a hard save here, and since this is the very first level 3 weapon that I'm getting, I'm going to keep re-rolling until I get what I want. And there we go. There's our weapon. And as I mentioned last episode, I think it really makes sense to go for a red item with this first level 3 weapon. And the reason is because that's the biggest pool. There's only 4 yellow weapons and only 2 blue weapons, but there's 6 red weapons. So get what you want from red first. And for me, you can see here this says new, so this is my very first one. It's the sword. I just want the regular sword, Devil's Bane. And as you can see, assassins can use this, so that'll give me a little bit of mileage in the short term. And in the long term, I'll switch it over to my main pawn. Fighter is going to be his end game. That means I'm still in the hunt for a level 3 dagger and a level 3 short bow. But as I said, there's only 4 items in the yellow list at level 3. So I like my odds much better there than with red. And that brings us to round number 2 with Daimon. We are much stronger now. I've maxed out my level and the level of my main pawn, which means I've switched into Strider for myself and Fighter for Honest Man. Along the way, I did kill Death, and I do want to note that I killed Death exactly once. Certainly there's this concept of farming Death for XP, and he is very good for XP. I think that's 100% unnecessary. And part of the reason I say that, obviously, and understand the context here, is that I am on hard mode, which means experience from all enemy kills is doubled. And then if you combo that with the Blessed Flower, it's quadrupled. So when I killed Death with a Blessed Flower in hand, I think I gained like 5 levels. And I was very, very high level at the time. So really didn't see a need to continually farm him. A lot of the farming that I did was just in search of equipment. And I did a very small amount of Maneater farming for Rift Crystals. So long story short, if you're on hard mode, absolutely do not waste any time trying to farm levels, in my opinion. I think there's going to be more than enough XP. You don't really need to go out of your way for it, especially if you're abusing the Blessed Flower like I recommended. In addition, when you kill Death, you really want to try to get at least 1 Bone Lantern and at least 1 Sith Shard. And the reason is because you're going to need those for equipment upgrades. And as long as you get 1 of each, you can use the guy who ran the Black Cat to duplicate them. So that was my game plan. Ultimately, I wanted at least 5 Bone Lanterns and at least 3 Sith Shards. And the exact same thing goes for your first kill against Daimon. He's going to drop some items that are going to be useful for weapon upgrades and equipment upgrades. Go ahead and duplicate those at the Black Cat. It's not going to be cheap, but especially in the case of Death, because he's such a pain to kill, I'd rather just kill him once and be done with it. So that's the tip there. One last gear check before the final showdown here. I have silver frame blades. This is the level 3 bitter black dagger. I also have a gold darkening storm short bow. This is the level 3 bitter black short bow. But I'm starting out with the old trusty gold rusted bow. Once again, we want to get Torpor on his first form. His second form is immune, unfortunately. My Hood of Oblivion is now gold tier. For torso, I have the gold dragon leather vest, as well as a gold coat of Oblivion. This was another perfect armor that I managed to get. As you can see, it has the gradually restores health enchantment, which is definitely what you want for your chest piece. For arms, I think there's a little bit of a debate there. At least for me, there is. I think most people would advocate for this enchantment here, restores stamina when you deliver the killing blow. And I think it's okay. I don't think it's necessarily black and white. I think it depends on what you're doing. For a martial fighter, like Honest Man here, he's got a shield. I actually think it's better to have boosts the power of normal and magic shields. Or if you're a Mystic Knight, for that matter. I think certainly I would hope everyone would be on board with this for Mystic Knights. For Striders and Assassins, Rangers, Magic Archers, I think most people will say go with Restore Stamina. It's not bad. There's just nothing really better, is the thing. Like, this is not game-changing in my view. This does not come up often enough to be relevant. The times where I'm really lacking for stamina, particularly on hard mode, like on normal mode, stamina is basically irrelevant. But on hard mode, the times when I'm lacking for stamina are when I'm climbing on something big. And if I'm climbing on something big, there's not going to be a bunch of other enemies that I can kill to get stamina back. So this is basically meaningless in the one situation where you really need it. All this is to say I would not lose any sleep over your arm enchantments. So that tangent aside, as I mentioned, I have the Gauntlets of Shadow on Mary's arms with the stamina regeneration, which is not going to be relevant in this combat. On the legs, we still have the Delta Guard and Assault Boots, but Assault Boots are finally gold. For the cloak, I have a gold Hellfire Cloak, just going for maximum defense and resistances here. I also carry around a Harpy Cloak. This is great if you need sleep resistance. This paired with the Assault Boots gets you to 100%. So that's nice for those, unplanned encounters with death. And then finally, I like to carry around a Divine Embrace. And this is primarily for the curse protection. Particularly if you're fighting a cursed dragon, that can be very handy. So those are sort of the 3 cloaks I carry. For this specific combat, Hellfire Cloak I think is the way to go. For rings, I have a Daggorist's Band and a Strider's Band. Daggorist's Band, there's only one flavor of these, and that's Cutting Wind, 100 Kisses upgrades. Strider's Band, there's a couple different variations of this. Many would argue this is not the best one. And I think if we're talking about a pawn, you definitely want Splitter and Volley, not Splitter and Leaping Stone. And that's because pawns just aren't smart enough to combo Splitter and Soaring Stone. So this band doesn't really help pawns. For a main character, it's a little more of a judgment call, but I'm honestly not at the point where I even have Leaping Stone yet. So it's a little bit of a moot point. I'm really just after Brain Splitter here. But nevertheless, I did want to put that out there. For my main pawn, Honest Man here, I have Silver Devil's Bane on the sword. And the shield, I have a Gold Dragon's Roost. This is a level 2 armor, but also available through a Moonstone door, which is how I got it. Ultimately, I want to have him with a Rusted Shield so that he can inflict torpor on enemies. But for Daimon here, I didn't want to leave it to chance, so I'm just going to have the Rusted Bow on Mary instead. I have a Gold Immortal's Helmet. I moved the Abyssal outfit over to Honest Man off of Mary. That's gold. And I have a Dragon Forged Hellfire Armor. This is definitely not the enchantment that I want. For the arms, I have the Silver Hellfire Gauntlets that I noted earlier. And for legs, we have the Gold Twisted Leathers and Gold Assault Boots. He also has a Gold Hellfire Cloak. And then for rings, we still very much care about petrification resistance, so I have to have this protection here. And then I have a Fighter's Ring just to upgrade his Soul Skewer. Ultimately, the most important resistances for this encounter are Possession and Petrification. So before it was just Petrification, now we add Possession to the list of concerns. Fortunately, the Hellfire Cloak addresses that perfectly with 100% resistance to Possession. I will note for Mary that she doesn't actually need that cloak because the headpiece, the Hood of Oblivion, bestows 100% protection to Possession. So if you only have one cloak, for example, if you don't have two, just look for different ways to get those resistances. Last but not least, I once again have a handful of Wake Stones. We shall see if I need them. And a modest selection of curatives. I don't know how much of this I'm really going to need, but just some emergency staples. And once again, I have some liquid vim. I also just realized in this moment that I forgot blast arrows. So that would be a good idea, but I'm not going back for them. Now the first half here should be identical to what we already saw. And there we go, there's our status effects.
Every blow is fearsome strong. Guard or fight. And magic, and both well lethal.
I'm going to pop some liquid vim here just to be safe. No problem.
Slave to a broken order, dare you look upon the truth? I have seen the scattering of countless myriad souls.
Let's switch into my regular bow here.
They gather and flow to become master of the fight.
I've learned a new way to fight their ill.
Great head sprouting from its belly.
Resistance will not spare you from its claws.
What a base and trifling creature is
Another Vim here.
I bid you, hone your spirit, refine it. I shall awaken in the crucible of spirit.
There we go.
Did it!
Once again, we will have an array of treasures at our disposal, but at this point, do you really need treasure anymore? Maybe. There's a level 3 armor in here for sure. Oh, and I did want to highlight my augments. I was using Eminence, although this didn't really come into play. I didn't use Brain Splitter at all. I still have Bastion for reducing physical damage, and Sinew for increasing carry weight, as well as Vehemence and Clout for strength augments. But particularly important is Adhesion. Makes it harder for an enemy to throw you off while you're climbing it. My main pawn also has Bastion to reduce physical damage, as well as Awareness to reduce magical damage. Vehemence and Clout, of course, to boost strength. Ferocity to increase core skill damage. And then finally, Adhesion as well. For shield, he just has Symbol Onslaught. And sword is Dragon's Maw, Soul Skewer, Full Moon Slash. For Mary, we have Cutting Wind, Skull Splitter, and 100 Kisses, all 3 of those being upgraded through her bands. And on the bow, the only one I really used here was Fivefold Flurry in that fight. Last but not least, shout out to Rita and Buka, who were the public pawns that helped me in that encounter. And now I think I've said everything that I have to say about Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen. I'm definitely going to keep playing though. I want to do a New Game Plus, get some more equipment, including another Abyssal outfit, and collect some more achievements, as well as do a speedrun. But I think this concludes my Dragon's Dogma content. So I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. Thank you all so much. Please like and subscribe. This has been Honest Man and Mary Abernathy, and we will see you next time.